I never thought inflammation would silently shape the course of my health after 60, but it did. One morning, I woke up with aching joints and a cloudy mind, chalking it up to aging. But little did I know, inflammation was quietly working against me, damaging my heart, my brain, and even my energy. That's when I dove deep and learned something that changed my life forever. If you're over 60 like me, what I'm about to share might be the most important health wake-up call you ever get. Stay with me to the end, because knowing how to spot, fight, and reverse silent inflammation could add vibrant, pain-free years to your life. Asterisk, I still remember the morning it all began, not because it was special, but because it felt strangely off. I woke up in my usual way, stretched my arms overhead, and swung my legs off the bed. But this time, my knees screamed back at me. There was a tight stiffness in my hands too, like I'd been clenching them in my sleep. My body didn't just feel old, it felt inflamed, like something inside was smoldering and refusing to settle. Now don't get me wrong, I've had my fair share of creaky joints and minor aches over the years. It's part of the package, right? At least that's what I used to tell myself. You're just getting older, I'd mutter while rubbing my knees. Or it's probably the weather, when my fingers felt swollen and stiff. But this time, something was different. The discomfort didn't go away after a warm shower. In fact, by mid-morning, it had spread, my lower back throbbed, and my energy was in the gutter. That night, while brushing my teeth, I looked at myself in the mirror. Not in the usual passing glance, but really looked. My face seemed puffier than usual. My eyes had that tired, sunken look I hadn't noticed before. There was a dull redness around my cheeks and bags under my eyes. I thought, is this really just aging, or is something else going on inside me? That question stayed with me for days. And then something small but eye-opening happened. I was talking to my daughter on a video call, and she said, "Dad, you look tired. Are you getting enough rest?" I wanted to tell her it was nothing, but the truth was I'd been waking up feeling exhausted no matter how early I went to bed. Fatigue was heavier than ever, and I didn't feel like myself. It was that very night I sat down at my computer and typed a phrase I had never searched before: signs of inflammation in older adults. The results stunned me. Words like chronic inflammation, silent killer, and low-grade internal fire flashed across the screen. I read how inflammation wasn't just a response to injury or infection, it could become chronic and persist silently inside the body. It could damage blood vessels, wear down joints, disrupt brain function, and even lead to heart disease, diabetes, or Alzheimer's. The more I read, the more I recognized myself in the symptoms: joint pain, brain fog, fatigue, swelling, and even mood swings. Suddenly, I realized I wasn't just getting old. My body was trying to tell me something, and I hadn't been listening. Looking back now, I realized my body had been whispering for years. The creeping aches that came sooner in the day, the extra pounds that wouldn't go away, the weird bloating after meals I used to ignore, even the occasional forgetfulness that made me laugh off senior moments. But all these were signs warning flares in the dark. And the scariest part, I'd accepted them as normal. That moment sitting alone late at night, reading about inflammation, was a turning point. I realized that if I didn't take action, this silent enemy would keep growing inside me. It wasn't just about comfort anymore, it was about my heart, my brain, my longevity. I had friends who had suffered strokes or heart attacks out of the blue, but maybe it wasn't out of the blue at all. Maybe inflammation had been working behind the scenes the whole time. I made an appointment with my doctor the next day. I didn't walk in like I usually did, letting them lead the conversation. This time, I brought a list of symptoms. I brought questions, I brought curiosity, and more importantly, I brought urgency. To my surprise, my doctor didn't dismiss me. In fact, she nodded thoughtfully and said, "You're not wrong to be concerned. Chronic inflammation is a real issue, especially for seniors. Let's run some labs and take a deeper look." Those tests revealed what I feared but expected: elevated CRP, C-reactive protein, a marker for inflammation. Not dangerously high, but enough to raise a red flag. My blood pressure was creeping up, my triglycerides weren't ideal, my fasting blood sugar, higher than it should have been. But here's what amazed me. She said it wasn't too late to change. Inflammation is reversible, she said, especially when you catch it early. I walked out of that office with more than lab results. I walked out with hope. For the first time in a while, I didn't feel like a passive victim of age. I felt like I had a say in what happened next. And that changed everything. Over the next few weeks, I dove into research like my life depended on it, because frankly, it did. I started tracking my symptoms, journaling what I ate, how I felt, and how I slept. I learned how certain foods I once considered healthy enough were actually inflammation bombs in disguise. I discovered how stress, even mild daily stress, was pouring gasoline on the fire. And most surprising of all, I learned that inflammation wasn't always painful. Sometimes it was just a cloud of fatigue or a mental fog that made life feel heavy. And yet, the more I paid attention, the more control I gained. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was empowered. That's why I'm sharing this story with you now, not as a doctor or health guru, but as someone who is just like you. Someone who thought aging just meant slowing down, creaking joints, and losing energy. But what I learned is that much of that isn't aging, it's inflammation. And if we catch it early, if we listen to our bodies, we can stop it in its tracks. So, that was the day my body sent a warning. And thank God I listened, because that moment sparked a journey that not only saved my health, it gave me back hope, energy, and a sense of control I thought I had lost forever. For most of my life, I believed that aches, stiffness, fatigue, and forgetfulness were just part of aging, a natural decline, something inevitable. We've all heard it, haven't we? You're just getting older. That phrase was practically stitched into every doctor's visit, every conversation about pain, and for a while, I accepted it. But what if I told you like I had to tell myself that age wasn't the real enemy, that the culprit wasn't the number on your birthday cake, but a far more subtle and dangerous force? It's called silent inflammation, and it changed everything I thought I knew about growing older. After my wake-up call the morning when my body felt like it was fighting, I started digging deeper. I spent nights reading medical journals, health articles, and stories from other seniors. And over again, one phrase kept appearing: chronic inflammation. At first it confused me. I always thought inflammation was what happened when you cut yourself or sprained your ankle, a bit of swelling and redness. That made sense, but this was something else entirely. I learned that inflammation actually is a good thing, at least at first. It's how our body responds to injury or infection. When you get a cut, your immune system sends white blood cells to protect and repair the area. That's acute inflammation. It's necessary. It's healthy. But chronic inflammation? That's a different story. It's like having a fire alarm that won't shut off. Your immune system stays activated long after the threat is gone, and instead of healing, it starts to damage healthy tissue quietly and steadily. You don't even feel it until the effects begin to show. Fatigue, joint pain, brain fog, depression, high blood pressure, and even serious illnesses like diabetes, heart disease, or dementia. It blew my mind. Here I was, blaming getting old for everything. Meanwhile, this internal fire was burning inside my body day after day, year after year, and I had no idea. And the worst part, this silent inflammation doesn't show itself in dramatic ways. It creeps in quietly. It's not the sharp stabbing pain that sends you to the ER. It's the dull stiffness that keeps you from gardening. It's the forgetfulness that makes you repeat a story twice. It's the fatigue that makes you cancel plans. You start withdrawing. You start blaming your age. And slowly, you stop living the way you used to. That realization hit me hard. I felt angry that I hadn't known this sooner, that no one had told me inflammation could be at the root of so many problems. I remember thinking back to my buddy Richard, a healthy guy, never smoked, didn't drink much, stayed active. But out of nowhere, he had a heart attack at 67. Doctors said his arteries were inflamed, not just clogged, inflamed. Then there was my neighbor Janet, who was diagnosed with early dementia. Her daughter later told me that doctors were researching links between inflammation and cognitive decline. I couldn't believe it. These weren't just isolated stories. They were all pieces of the same puzzle. And suddenly, I saw it everywhere, in people around me, in friends, in my own body. That's when I truly understood something that shifted my mindset forever. It's not aging that's making us sick, it's inflammation. The fatigue, the stiffness, the forgetfulness, the rising blood sugar, the low mood. It's not that we're just old. It's that our bodies are inflamed. And here's the good news that brought me so much hope. While we can't stop aging, we can fight inflammation. That distinction is powerful. It meant that I wasn't powerless, that I didn't have to settle for a slow decline, that I didn't have to accept my health slipping away just because I crossed a certain age. I started to look at aging differently, not as a process of falling apart, but as a process that needs maintenance, care, and attention just like anything else. Think about it like this. If your car's been running for 60 or 70 years, it's going to need better fuel, regular and a little more TLC. You wouldn't pour cheap oil into a classic engine and expect it to run smoothly. So why do we treat our bodies that way? Our joints, our brains, our hearts, they don't just go bad. They respond to how we treat them. And inflammation is often the result of poor fuel, constant stress, lack of movement, and toxic habits we've normalized for decades. The body isn't failing, it's responding. Learning this gave me a strange mix of emotions. I felt regret, of course, for the years I spent ignoring the signs. But more than that, I felt empowered, because now I knew, now I had a name for what was happening. And once you name something, you can face it. Inflammation wasn't this mysterious force anymore. It was something I could measure, fight, and reduce. My doctor helped me track markers like CRP and homocysteine. I learned how inflammation doesn't just affect one system, it affects everything. Joints, skin, digestion, mood, sleep. It's all connected. And you know what else? I realized I wasn't alone. As I talked to more people my age, I noticed a shift. More and more of us were waking up to this truth. We were learning that our aches weren't just bad luck. That fatigue wasn't just the cost of getting older. That inflammation was the real villain, on that we had more power than we thought. Now, I look at inflammation as a message, not a curse. It's my body's way of saying, something's off. Pay attention. And once I started listening, everything changed. I stopped ignoring the signals. I stopped blaming age. And I started taking action. I'll tell you more about those actions soon, simple changes that made a world of difference. But for now, I want you to take this in. If you're over 60 and feeling tired, stiff, or not quite yourself, don't just chalk it up to age. Your body might be inflamed, and that means you still have time to reverse it. Time to protect your heart, your brain, your joints, and your future. Trust me, age isn't your enemy. Silent inflammation is. And the sooner you confront it, the better life gets. Once I realized that inflammation, not aging, was the real problem, the next question hit me like a ton of bricks. What was causing it? Because if I wanted to fight inflammation, I had to understand what was feeding it. And to my surprise, the enemy wasn't hiding in some obscure disease or rare condition. It was hiding in my daily habits. The things I did or didn't do every single day. That was both terrifying and empowering. Terrifying because I realized I had unknowingly been hurting myself. Empowering because I now had the choice to change. Let me take you back to my usual morning routine a year ago. I'd start my day with a slice of white bread toast, slathered with margarine, and a steaming cup of coffee with sugar. Not a breakfast of champions, but it gave me comfort. Then, I'd sit in my recliner with the remote in one hand and the newspaper in the other. Hours would pass before I even considered moving. Maybe a short walk to the mailbox, maybe not. Lunch would usually be something frozen, those quick and easy microwavable meals, loaded with sodium, low in nutrients, and let's not even talk about the processed meats. By dinner, I'd treat myself to some fried chicken or a sandwich with deli meat and cheese, and sometimes a glass of wine or two if I was feeling relaxed. If you had asked me back then, I would have said, I'm not doing anything wrong, just living like I always have. But that was the problem. I was fueling the fire without realizing it. The first thing I learned about inflammation was that it thrives on sugar. And guess what was hiding in nearly everything I ate? Sugar. From my sweetened coffee to that soft white bread, even in the sauces and dressings, sugar was everywhere. And not just the kind you taste. There are sneaky names for it. High fructose corn syrup, maltodextrin. I didn't even know what those were. Then there were refined carbs, white bread, pasta, crackers. All of them turn to sugar quickly in your body, causing blood sugar spikes. And those spikes, they send your body into inflammatory overdrive. What really shocked me, though, was learning that even the margarine I thought was a healthy butter alternative was packed with trans fats, one of the most inflammatory substances you can put into your body. I had been choosing it for years, thinking I was doing my heart a favor. And don't get me started on processed meats. Bacon, deli ham, hot dogs, these were staples in my fridge. But behind their savory flavor was a cocktail of preservatives, nitrates, and omega-6 fats. These trigger chronic inflammation, especially when consumed daily. But it wasn't just food. My lifestyle was feeding inflammation too. Let me be brutally honest before my health scare. I was sedentary. The kind of sedentary that makes your joints rust and your muscles melt away. I thought taking it easy was normal after a certain age. I mean, who wants to run marathons at 65? But it turns out, lack of movement is one of the fastest ways to encourage inflammation. When you sit too long, your circulation slows, your lymph system stalls, and your body can't clear out the toxins that trigger inflammation. Then came the one I never saw coming: stress. I always considered myself a calm person. But the more I reflected, the more I realized I was constantly worrying about finances, my kids, the state of the world, even my own health. That constant mental tension. It keeps your cortisol levels elevated. And when cortisol is high, inflammation gets a free pass to roam. Poor sleep was another major culprit. I used to stay up late watching TV, then toss and turn all night, waking up groggy. I thought it was just part of getting older, but I found out that even one night of poor sleep can raise inflammation markers in the blood. And I was stringing together years of restless nights when I finally laid it all out: my food, my habits, my stress levels. I had to take a hard look at myself. I wasn't just passively aging. I was actively, though unknowingly, an environment in my body that encouraged inflammation to grow stronger every day. And that realization stung, because it meant I was part of the problem. But the beauty of that truth was this: if I was part of the problem, I could also be part of the solution. The very next morning, I stood in my kitchen and looked at my breakfast differently. The toast out, the margarine gone, the sugar-laced coffee replaced. Instead, I scrambled 2 eggs in olive oil, added a handful of spinach, and had a small bowl of berries on the side. It wasn't just healthier, it felt better. No bloating, no crash. An hour later, my body said thank you. I also started walking every morning, just 10 minutes at first, then 15, then 20. Nothing fancy, just me, the fresh air, and my thoughts, and slowly, the stiffness started to ease. More importantly, I felt alive again. I started practicing deep breathing before bed, listening to calming music instead of falling asleep to the TV. My sleep got deeper, my mind felt clearer. Bit by bit, I could feel my body coming back to life. And it all started with noticing the little things, the small, everyday habits that were either building health or building inflammation. You see, when you're over 60, every habit matters more than ever. You can't afford to keep fueling the fire. Because at this stage in life, inflammation isn't just about penance. about your heart, your brain, your independence. I know that sounds dramatic, but I've lived it. I've felt the difference between a body on fire and a body at peace. And the difference, it wasn't magic. It was me, changing how I lived each day. So, if you're feeling tired, swollen, stiff, or foggy, take a look at your daily routine. Not to feel guilty, but to take back control. Because chances are, the inflammation that's dragging you down is being fed by the little things you think are harmless. But the moment you recognize them, you start winning. I never imagined that small changes, tiny decisions, made every day could reverse the damage I thought was permanent. When I first learned about chronic inflammation, it felt overwhelming. I asked myself, how am I supposed to change a lifetime of habits? After all, I wasn't some 30-year-old health nut. I was in my 60s, already feeling the wear and tear. My energy was low, my joints were stiff, and most days I just wanted to make it to bedtime without too much pain. But here's the truth. I discovered, you don't have to change everything overnight. You just have to start. One small shift at a time. And over the weeks and months, those little steps began to snowball until I looked back and barely recognized the person I used to be. Let me share the simple changes that helped me go from sluggish and inflamed to energized and clear-headed. 1. I turned my plate into medicine. One of the first things I tackled was food. And no, I didn't follow some strict, joyless diet. I just started thinking of food as either fuel or fire. If it fueled inflammation, it had to go. If it helped put the fire out, it stayed. I began with one change. No more sugar in my coffee. At first it tasted bitter, but after just a week, my taste buds adjusted and my energy felt more stable in the mornings. No more crashing at 10 a.m., then I swapped out white bread for whole grains, replaced margarine with olive oil. I added anti-inflammatory heroes to my meals, fatty fish like salmon twice a week, leafy greens like spinach and kale, colorful berries, which are rich in antioxidants, turmeric, which I started adding to my tea with a dash of black pepper. I didn't count calories. I didn't follow a meal plan. I just focused on adding the good stuff, and soon, the bad stuff naturally started falling away. And here's the part that surprised me the most. My taste buds changed. I stopped craving processed foods. Real food started tasting better. My body responded with less bloating, more energy, and even, dare I say, better moods. 2. I started moving gently but consistently. I used to think exercise meant heavy sweat and sore muscles. No thanks. But I learned that for someone over 60, gentle movement, done daily, is far more powerful than intense workouts done occasionally. So I began walking every morning. Just 10 minutes around the block. No fancy gear. No apps. Just me and the sound of birds in the morning air. By the second week, I noticed my legs didn't ache as much when I got out of bed. My balance improved. And surprisingly, my mood lifted. Walking became my therapy. I added gentle stretching in the evenings while watching TV, just a few movements to keep my joints fluid. Eventually, I incorporated light resistance bands and simple bodyweight exercises. The key wasn't intensity, it was consistency. Even on bad days, I told myself, just 5 minutes. That's it. And most days, once I started, I ended up doing more. Movement became medicine, not punishment. 3. I took stress off the menu. If inflammation is the fire, then stress is the gasoline. And I didn't even realize how much stress I was carrying until I started letting it go. I'm not talking about dramatic life changes. I didn't move to a beach or join a mosque. I just started doing one thing every day to lower my stress load. Some days, I sat quietly for 10 minutes and focused on my breathing. No phone, no news, just silence and breath. Other days, I put on old music that made me feel happy, songs from my youth, and danced a little in the kitchen. I also started journaling, just a few lines each night. What went well today? What am I grateful for? What am I letting go of? Little by little, my mind became less cluttered. My sleep improved. And as my stress dropped, so did my inflammation symptoms, for I respected my sleep like a sacred ritual. Sleep used to be an afterthought for me. I'd stay up late, scroll through my phone, fall asleep with the TV on, then toss and turn all night. Once I learned that poor sleep keeps inflammation high, I made a change. I created a sleep routine, nothing fancy, just a few habits that made bedtime sacred. I dimmed the lights an hour before bed. No screens after 9 p.m. I drank chamomile tea and read a physical book, not a phone. I kept my bedroom cool and completely dark. By the 3rd week of this new routine, I was sleeping deeper, waking up feeling lighter, and best of all, my pain levels dropped. My body was finally getting the rest it needed to repair itself. 5. I gave my body the right support. I used to pop a pain pill when my knees flared up, but now, I look for natural support. Under my doctor's guidance, I started taking a few natural anti-inflammatory supplements. Omega-3 fish oil, curcumin, from turmeric, magnesium, vitamin D. These weren't magic pills, but over time they helped my body stay calm and balanced, especially when paired with my healthier lifestyle. I won't lie, there were days I felt tempted to fall back into old habits. Days when I was tired or frustrated, but every time I remembered the pain, the fog, and the hopelessness I used to feel, I knew I never wanted to go back. And now, I wake up with clearer joints and a clearer mind. I have more energy throughout the day without needing naps. I feel hopeful, not helpless. The fire inside me isn't raging anymore. It's been tamed, controlled, managed, and I did that one choice at a time. If you're reading this and feeling overwhelmed, let me tell you something I wish someone told me sooner. You don't need a complete overhaul. You just need momentum. Pick one thing today, one small change. Switch to olive oil. Take a short walk. Go to bed 30 minutes earlier. Do it consistently, then add another. Because these simple shifts, they're not just habits. They're lifelines. And they're the reason I feel younger at 67 than I did at 57. It's been a year now since I began my journey, one small change at a time to fight the silent inflammation that was quietly stealing my health. Looking back, I hardly recognize the man I used to be. He was always tired, always stiff, forgetful, moody, always making excuses and blaming age for every ache and every ounce of fatigue. That man lived in a foga, mental and physical haze, and he thought that was just life after 60. But today, I feel different. I feel alive. The energy that had slipped through my fingers year after year, it's back. Not like it was in my 30s, but strong enough to go through the day without dragging. My knees still creak a little now and then, sure, but that deep, constant burning, gone. The weight of fatigue has lifted. The fog in my brain has cleared, and I sleep like I haven't in decades. The most beautiful part of this entire journey is the freedom I've reclaimed. Freedom from pain, freedom from fear, freedom from the feeling that my best years were already behind me. And if I could go back and speak to that tired version of myself, the man who didn't know what inflammation was or how deeply it was affecting his life, I'd lean in and say, it's not too late. Your story isn't over. You still have time to heal. But you have to start now. I get it. Taking the first step is scary. It's so much easier to blame aging, to resign, to say it's just how things are after a certain age. But here's what I know now. That mindset is more dangerous than inflammation itself, because it steals your power. And once you lose that sense of power over your own body, you begin to slowly fade emotionally, mentally, physically. If you're reading this and thinking, I'm too old to change, let me stop you right there. You are not. I've met people in their 70s and 80s who reversed years of inflammation. One friend of mine, in his late 70s, started walking 15 minutes a day and added salmon and greens to his diet. His blood pressure improved, his arthritis pain decreased, and best of all, he started smiling again, laughing again. Sometimes we underestimate how much inflammation steals our joy. It doesn't just hurt our bodies, it dulls our spirit. And once you begin to heal, it's not just your health that improves, it's your life. When I started this journey, I was doing it just to feel a little better. I never expected the ripple effects it would have. My relationships improved because I wasn't so irritable or tired all the time. I had the patience and energy to spend real time with my grandkids, to listen more deeply to my wife, to be more present with friends. My mood stabilized. I didn't realize how much inflammation was affecting my brain. I used to have dark, moody spells where I just didn't feel like myself. Now I have peace. I laugh more. I think more clearly. Even small tasks like getting groceries, tidying the house, watering plants no longer feel like burdens. They feel like living. I didn't just remove inflammation. I got my life back. And that's what I want to leave you with. Hope. Because, if you're like I was, tired, stiff, forgetful, maybe even a little scared, just know this. You are not broken. You are not too far gone. You don't need a miracle. You just need momentum. Start with something small today. Swap out soda for water with lemon. Take a 10-minute walk after dinner. Turn off the TV 30 minutes earlier and stretch. Eat a handful of walnuts instead of chips. These aren't extreme changes, but they stack up. And one day, not too far from now, you'll wake up and realize your joints feel a little looser. Your mind feels a little clearer. Your energy feels a little more steady. And you'll smile just like I did and whisper to yourself, I'm coming back. I want to leave you with a simple truth I now carry with me every single day. Aging is inevitable. Inflammation is optional. Yes, the years will keep coming, but how we experience them, that's up to us. You don't have to surrender to fatigue, pain, and fog. You can age with vitality, clarity, and grace. And you don't need fancy treatments or expensive programs to do it. All you need is awareness, consistency, and the belief that your body still wants to heal. It just needs your help. If I could give one piece of advice to every senior reading this, it would be this. Don't wait for a crisis to change. I got lucky. I listened to my body before things got worse. But many aren't so fortunate. Heart attacks, cognitive decline, stroke, type 2 diabetes. These are often the final results of inflammation that was ignored too long. Don't wait for that moment. Don't wait until you have to change. Choose to change now while you still can. Because every day you wait, the fire burns a little stronger. But every day you act, the flame dies down, and one day soon, your body will thank you not with words, but with peace. Peace in your joints, peace in your heart, peace in your mind. Now, I walk with more confidence. I laugh with less effort. I live with more intention. And above all, I'm grateful. Grateful that I chose to listen. Grateful that I didn't believe the lie that said it's just age. Grateful that I still had time and that I used it well. So now I pass the torch to you. Take what I've shared, apply what resonates, and give your body what it's been asking for all along, the chance to heal.